Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. I want to make sure that we are doing okay. We're showing we got audio, sound, and everything on this end here. If you guys can just let me know over there in the chat room as soon as you guys pop up that everything is okay on that end there. We're going to continue to go. It looks like we got a green light on this end here. So shalom to Copenhagen there, and everything looks good. That's great to hear that. So, all right, we're going to get right into this news broadcast this evening. Let you guys know as well, a couple of quick announcements there. Don't forget the conference in where is it? Lebanon, Tennessee, just right there outside of gosh, can't even think of the name now. Nashville, Tennessee there. We will be there the 14th and 15th of September. I will try to get that information together and put it in the description below here later on there. A lot of things are going on. The conference in Oregon is also shaping up with L.A. Marzulli and my wife both speaking at that conference. That'll be January, I think it's the 18th of next year. I'm not sure on the date. We're getting all those details put together, so you'll be able to register for that very soon as well. And also one other announcement, very important, Patreon. We are starting to really gear up for Patreon. We just recorded tonight a broadcast, and it is a very serious look where it speaks of in the 1 Peter there, judgment begins in the house of God. And something the Lord really began to reveal in my heart near the end of that broadcast. It's more on those sensitive nature there, especially after we see what's happened to Alex Jones being shut down here on YouTube. We're taking that a bit more serious there. But we'll continue to do news here, continue to give you prophetic insights. But when we realize that there are certain groups there that need to be called out, we're going to have to be a little bit more cautious here on Israeli News Live. In fact, when I was checking at my wife's channel earlier today, I also noticed that her videos had been removed. Now, when I went in there privately, they were there, but when I just tried to go in to view one of her videos there was no video files whatsoever. Don't know if it's going to stay that way. We will have to wait and see there. Just checking in again. Everything looks good, sounds great, no problems. Let me know. Okay, great. You guys can hear. All right, so we'll continue on though. So anyway, the Saudis bombed a court. Well, let me back up to here to the RT report here. It says here that the Saudi-led coalition has accused the Hoothie Rebels in Yemen of using children as a human shield, saying their airstrikes in Sa'ad constituted legitimate action. The Red Cross has called for protection of civilians during the conflict. But nonetheless, the bus was hit and killed about 50 children. About 70 of those children have been wounded. There have been scrambling to save those lives of the children that were wounded in this. And to me, I don't care. It is not justifiable, even though the Houthis may be hiding behind the children, when you know you've got a bus full of kids and then you target the convoy anyway just to make sure you get your enemy at the risk of this many children being killed. That is definitely wrong there. In this report here, it says 47 children were killed, 77 others were injured. Let me kind of make sure the sound is down. These were children being brought in to the ER there, and different conditions there of the children. But at any rate there, many of them in the operating room, etc. there. What really got me though was Heather Nauert's, her response to the situation there on the ground when she's being confronted about it. And the journalist, first she kind of plays it off as, the reports are just reports. They have not been able to confirm anything. She just really makes light of it. And it's really troubling to me to see that. And then to stand behind the Saudis regardless of what happened. And the reporters make it clear, no, this is not just some alleged report. This is a known fact what happened. Listen to what is said here.
Strike in Yemen, which appears to have killed dozens of children. The Saudis obviously are the ones who conducted this, but they do that with weapons supplied by the U.S., with training supplied by the U.S., and with targeting information, targeting data supplied by the U.S. How can something like this happen?
how can something like that report happen? Well, I think we would start by saying, yeah, how can situations like this happen? You know, we don't have the full details about what happened on the ground. We've certainly seen the news reports of what has been reported happened, okay? I can't confirm all the details because we are not there on the ground. We can say that we're certainly concerned about these reports that resulted, that there was an attack that resulted in the deaths of civilians. We call on the Saudi-led coalition to conduct a thorough and transparent investigation into the incident. We take all credible accounts of civilian casualties very seriously. We call on the parties to take appropriate measures to protect civilians in accordance with international law and urge all parties to investigate all reported incidents of civilian casualties.
Okay, well, they say already, the coalition says that they acted in accordance with international law, but if you look at the photographs, the video that come from the scene, it doesn't look like that's that's a credible answer. So are you okay with the coalition on its own doing an investigation, or would you like to see some kind of an international component to it, or
Well,
an
I think I just
investigation?
answered that, and we said that we would call upon the Saudi government
So
to do a full and thorough investigation, as we
Watch what
always
she
do.
says.
And we call upon all parties in any kind of situation like this to take appropriate measures to try to mitigate the risk of civilian
So you don't
casualties. DOD and other entities put out reports on this after the fact as they all start to investigate. And so we will look forward to any information on
Right, but
that.
my question is, you don't see a need for there to be something other than a coalition investigation? You don't see a need for an independent?
Matt, I'm not going to get ahead. This is something that is fresh, that just happened, so I'm not going to get ahead of any kind of investigation that may take place.
It's only the latest in a huge number of civilians killed during these operations, though.
I would encourage you to take a look, and that is, we regret any loss of civilian life. That is something that the United States government, in particular, anytime you talk to the Department of Defense about civilian casualties, they will say the same thing. That I'm not finished, okay? And they will say the exact same thing, that all parties take very strong responsibility and measures to try to protect against the loss of civilian life. As we have seen, and you all very rarely ask about the issue that has been unfolding and the devastation that has taken place in Yemen. Let's look at some of the things that have been happening in Yemen. You have the Hoothie Rebels who continue to attack Saudi Arabia. They continue to do that with Iranian weapons, missiles, and rockets. They continue to try.
Now, here's what I find interesting. She knows nothing about what happens when it comes to these children that all die, but she knows everything when it comes to what goes on with the Houthi rebels. And I'm definitely not in support of the Houthi rebels or one way or the other in this particular battle. But I do care about the loss of life, especially when it comes to children. And I agree. I know that U.S. commanders also care about the loss of life of children as well. I recognize that and support that. But this battle has gone on so long in Yemen, and the children are and mothers have suffered greater than any other war on the planet is in this planet here, or in this particular case here is in Yemen. It has got the most humanitarian crisis of all the battles combined in the world today. And yet nothing is being done to stop it. And what we're seeing is more and more that the Saudi government is more of a sponsor of state terrorism around the world than any other nation. So that really makes me question when it comes to the case in Yemen as well. Now, everybody would probably, especially in the U.S. State Department, would say, no, it's the Iranians that are sponsoring state terrorism. But you know, Syria has been very obvious. This was a democratic nation to begin with. They had freedoms in there. This was a nation that did not have the people that hated one another in the different groups. They had to bring in terrorists and jihadists to be able to try to overthrow this nation here. Because why? It was part of those 7 nations that were to be taken down in 5 years, according to General Wesley Clark. So I don't have a whole lot of trust in the Saudi regime, although Heather's going to give you a good reason why they should. Listen in.
Try to attack civilian infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, for example, and that is part of the reason why these actions are being taken. Let me go back and remind you what I just said a moment ago, and that is we call for an investigation, and we anticipate that a thorough investigation will be done. I don't have anything more for you on that.
The secretary isn't planning on having a conversation with...
I don't have any information for you on that. Okay? Hi, Nick.
Hey, Heather, is this the latest incident or the previous incidents causing the U.S. to reevaluate in any way the role that it's playing in the situation in terms of its relationship with Saudi Arabia?
We provide a tremendous amount of humanitarian assistance in Yemen to try to support civilians in Yemen and try to mitigate against the devastation that's taken place there in that country.
Yeah.
I don't have anything more for you on
But
that.
you also supply a tremendous amount of weaponry and the data for targeting to the Saudis.
Well then, sorry.
Right? No? Am I wrong? Is that wrong?
Sorry, these ladies over here are laughing. On that, I would refer you to the Department of Defense that is involved with that. But as you know, Saudi Arabia is an important strategic partner in the region to the United States.
Oh, so sorry, because NEOM, don't forget about NEOM.
Ask you about
They are an important strategic partner there. And not to mention, we're going to have a tri-state new world order between Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. Because remember, we have the global partnership there now. Israel's new-founded partners that really hate Jews too. Oh my gosh, what a mess going on in the Middle East. Anyway, Palestinians say Israel and Hamas reach a ceasefire and Israel denies it. I'm sure they've reached some kind of ceasefire. We don't really know exactly how that's going to go. Of course, again, rockets coming into Israel and Israel responding to those rockets again. 150 Gaza targets have been hit thus far. But what's also happening that we're not hearing about, and it may not going to be a ceasefire, because on Israel's newsfeed it says just in Israeli forces preparing for a massive operation in Gaza. It looks like a ground operation is going to come after all inside of Gaza. And I guess, well, you know, I always said if they would just take out Hamas, that could settle the issues. But, you know, let me tell you something, friends. One thing that we're not even being told in the public eye here, and that is some of the things that these Palestinians do go through, especially those in Gaza. Do you realize that the only drinking water they get is the recycled wastewater from Israel is pumped into Gaza as their drinking water? No wonder why there is a humanitarian crisis in this part of the world there. It is a problem on both sides. That's all I can tell you. It is a problem on both sides. I do realize this. I encourage you to watch the video that we did tonight on Patreon. It will not be loaded until tomorrow, though. It's very late at night here, so I'll try to get this uploaded first thing in the morning for you guys, because I've got to go through the editing process there. But I played a very prominent Israeli in this broadcast, and I think it'll be a blessing to you guys. Also, a couple other things real quick. This here, I wanted to share with you guys this particular video. This is in Iran, an Air B-727 making an emergency landing. Watch what happens here, and an amazing landing. If you'll notice, when he comes in, his front wheels on the plane do not come out. So the security is ready and waiting as he lands the plane with only the back wheels. And the pilot does a remarkable job. I would assume everybody survived, and that was an amazing job on that flight right there. Boris Johnson may end up running for Prime Minister. But anyway, Boris Johnson to be probed for alleged breach of the Tory Code of Conduct on reports that are coming out of Great Britain. I thought it was kind of interesting. I can't say as a fault Boris Johnson on this issue here. He talks about the Muslim, the burqa there, and let me get to the quote. It says, "It is not personal and it has nothing to do with Brexit. It is simply the same rules that apply to everyone in the party, the source told the newspaper there. But he says here, I know that many people found it offensive, but he did not. Wait a minute, I'm sorry, that's not what he said there. I'm trying to get where Boris Johnson speaks about this. He's speaking about the burqas, and but he likens it to abuse of women. And I do agree with him on that. Here we go, right here. If you say that it is weird and bullying to expect women to cover their faces, then I totally agree. And I would add that I can find no scriptural authority for the practice in the Quran. I would go further and say that it is absolutely ridiculous that people should choose to go around looking like letterboxes. He wrote. Actually, it's something that he actually wrote there. I thought it's kind of interesting because a lot of people considered this to be offensive, what he did, and were demanding an apology of Boris Johnson, but he refused to apologize thus far. And I can understand, because it is a breach of women's rights. Now, if women choose to wear a burqa, then they have a right to do so. But how many women that do not want to wear it, such in the case of like Iran, where they're forced to do so, that when they do take it off, they're arrested and put in prisons. So, very troubling indeed. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Oh, by the way, we were covering this earlier on our broadcast this evening for Patreon. Just kind of, I'll go ahead and hit this news here as well. Fox News, an 11-year-old girl was suspected of shoplifting at a Kroger supermarket. I believe she actually did. But the police officer tased this little girl. And 11 years old, been tased. We get into this issue because of law enforcement training with Israeli law enforcement, and you can't help but wonder sometimes if we're not allowing practices to come in America that are similar to those that are being used in Israel. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live, Erev Tov.